The stars had never seemed so close. Commander Jake Morrison stood at the observation window of Earth's largest orbital station, watching the alien vessel approach. It was massive, at least 3 times the size of anything humanity had ever built. Its hull shimmered with a strange silver-blue light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. "They're here," Lisa Grant said beside him. She was the lead engineer who had helped develop Earth's first faster-than-light engine. Her hands were shaking slightly, though she tried to hide it. "I still can't believe this is happening." Jake nodded. 6 months ago, humanity had achieved the impossible. They had broken the light barrier. The journey to Alpha Centauri had taken only 3 weeks instead of thousands of years. But the moment they activated their new engine, something had noticed. Within days, the message had arrived in dozens of languages, including English. The Galactic Concordat welcomed Earth to the community of spacefaring civilizations. Now, their representative was coming to evaluate humanity. The docking process took 2 hours. When the airlock finally opened, Ambassador Krell stepped through. He was tall, nearly 7 feet, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. His eyes were large and golden, and they swept across the human delegation with an expression that Jake recognized immediately: boredom mixed with superiority. "Greetings, primitives," Krell said. The translator device on his chest rendered his words in perfect English, though the tone remained condescending. "I am here to assess your worthiness for inclusion in the Concordat." Jake forced a smile. "Welcome to Earth's orbital station. We're honored to meet you." Krell made a dismissive gesture with one of his 4 hands. Yes, let us proceed with the evaluation. Show me your propulsion system." Lisa led the way to the engineering deck. As they walked, she couldn't help but chatter nervously about their achievements. "We've been working on FTL technology for about 30 years now. The breakthrough came when we figured out how to manipulate quantum fields to create a stable bubble around the ship. It's still experimental, but we've had 4 successful test flights." 30 years? Krell's tone suggested mild surprise. "That is remarkably fast for such a primitive species." "Primitive?" Lisa frowned. "We don't consider ourselves primitive. We've sent probes to every planet in our solar system. We've built colonies on Mars and Europa. We have fusion power, quantum computers, and advanced medical technology." Krell laughed, a strange clicking sound. "Child, my civilization achieved faster-than-light travel 40,000 years ago. Your entire technological history spans what? 2 centuries? You are infants playing with toys you barely understand." The words stung, but Jake kept his expression neutral. They reached the engineering bay where humanity's FTL prototype sat in its maintenance cradle. It wasn't pretty, just a collection of massive field generators surrounding a central core. But it worked. Lisa began explaining the technical details. Krell listened with half his attention, occasionally checking a device on one of his wrists. He seemed completely unimpressed until Lisa mentioned something offhandedly. "Of course, we're already working on the next iteration," she said. "We've identified at least a dozen inefficiencies in the current design. Give us another 6 months, and we should have version 2 ready. Probably get another 20% more speed out of it." For the first time, Krell's expression changed. His golden eyes focused sharply on Lisa. "You are already modifying the design, but you have barely tested it." "Well, yes," Lisa said, confused by his reaction. "That's how we do things. Build, test, improve, repeat. We've done it with everything from computer chips to rocket engines. Why would this be different?" "How long did it take your species to progress from your first industrial revolution to this?" Krell asked, his voice suddenly serious. Jake answered, "About 200 years, give or take." Krell stood very still. One of his hands moved to touch the translator on his chest, as if checking that it was working correctly. 200 years, he repeated slowly. From steam power to faster-than-light travel in 200 years. Is that unusual? Jake asked. Most species require 10,000 years, Krell said quietly. Some take 20,000. The average time from achieving basic spaceflight to developing FTL is 8,000 years. He looked at the human prototype with new eyes. You did it in less than a century from your first orbital flight. Lisa beamed with pride. We're pretty good at solving problems. It's kind of what humans do. We see something that doesn't work well, and we fix it. See something that works okay, and we make it better. Continuous improvement, Jake added. It's practically built into our culture. From our technology to our society to our sports. We're always looking for ways to do things faster, better, more efficiently. Krell was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke into a small device on his wrist, in his own language. The translator didn't render his words, but Jake caught the tone. It wasn't boredom anymore. It was concern. The rest of the tour passed in a blur. Krell asked question after question. How fast did human technology advance? How often did they update their systems? What was their average innovation cycle? With each answer, the alien ambassador grew more quiet and thoughtful. Finally, as he prepared to return to his ship, Krell addressed Jake directly. Commander, I am classifying your species as Category 4. You will be granted protectorate status within the Concordat. You may engage in limited trade and cultural exchange, but you are forbidden from sharing your technology with other species without approval. That seems restrictive, Jake said carefully. It is for your own protection, Krell replied, but something in his voice suggested he was protecting someone else. The galaxy is dangerous for young species. You need time to mature. After the alien ship departed, Lisa turned to Jake. Did that seem weird to you? The way he reacted when I talked about improving the engine? Yeah, Jake agreed. It was like the idea of making something better actually scared him. Why would progress scare an advanced civilization? Lisa wondered. Jake watched Krell's ship disappear into the distance, a growing unease in his gut. I don't know, but I think we just made them very nervous. On his ship, Ambassador Krell sat in his private chamber, composing a classified report. His hands trembled slightly as he entered the data. 200 years. It had taken the Vornothi Empire 15,000 years to achieve the same progress. The humans didn't just learn quickly. They improved constantly, relentlessly, without pause. He flagged the report with the highest security classification and titled it simply, Potential Exponential Threat Species. Then he added a personal note that would send ripples through the Concordat's leadership. They don't see technology as a destination, they see it as a starting point. They will never stop improving, never stop advancing. If current trends continue, they will surpass us within a single generation. Recommend immediate monitoring and potential containment protocols. Krell sent the report and sat back in his chair. He had evaluated hundreds of species in his career. None had ever frightened him before. But watching Lisa Grant casually discuss improving a technology they had barely invented, seeing the hunger for progress in Jake Morrison's eyes, Krell understood something terrifying. Humanity would not be content with what they had. They would always want more, always push further, always improve. And in a galaxy where the great civilizations had been stagnant for millennia, that kind of relentless progress was the most dangerous force imaginable. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Krell's visit, and Dr. Eric Palmer couldn't contain his excitement. He practically ran down the corridor of the research facility, clutching a datapad to his chest. His team had done it. They had actually done it. Megan, you have to see this, he called out as he burst into the testing bay. Captain Megan Ross looked up from the control panel she was reviewing. She was scheduled to take the Odyssey on its first test flight in a week, and she wanted to know every system, inside and out. What's got you so wound up, Eric? The shields, he said, breathless. We finished reverse engineering the Concordat shield technology they gave us access to. Megan raised an eyebrow. Isn't that what you've been working on for 6 months? Yes, but that's not the exciting part. Eric pulled up the data on his pad and showed her the numbers. We didn't just copy it. We improved it. 34% increase in efficiency. Megan stared at the numbers. Wait, you made their technology better? Way better, Eric confirmed. The alien design is solid, but it's incredibly inefficient. They use a triple-layer redundancy system that wastes enormous amounts of power. We streamlined it to a single adaptive layer that adjusts based on incoming threat analysis. Same protection, a third of the energy cost. Eric, that's incredible, Megan said. Then a thought occurred to her. Have you reported this to the Concordat yet? Our liaison officer sent the report this morning, Eric said. Standard protocol for any modifications to their technology. I'm sure they'll be pleased. But the Concordat was not pleased. 3,000 light-years away, on the Concordat Council Station, Admiral Zenth of the Kronar Defense Fleet reviewed the human report with growing alarm. He was a veteran of 200 years of military service, and he had never seen anything like this. They improved it? Council Member Trath asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. That's impossible. The shield design has been standard across the Concordat for 6,000 years. Apparently not impossible, Zenth replied grimly. He pulled up the technical specifications. Look at this. They completely redesigned the power distribution system, cut energy consumption by over 30% while maintaining the same defensive strength. But they're primitives, another council member protested. They've had access to our technology databases for less than a year. They shouldn't even understand how it works, let alone improve it. Zenth had spent the last 6 months reviewing everything known about humanity. He had read Krell's initial report dozens of times. He had studied their history, their wars, their technological development. And he had come to a terrifying conclusion. They're not like other species, he said quietly. Most civilizations we encounter are content once they achieve a certain level of technology. They maintain it, preserve it, but they don't fundamentally change it. Humans are different. They see every design as temporary, every system as incomplete. That's absurd, Trath said. Progress has natural limits. Eventually, you reach optimal efficiency. Do you really believe that? Zenth asked. Or is that just what we tell ourselves because we stopped trying millennia ago? The chamber fell silent. The question was uncomfortable because it touched on something the Concordat rarely discussed. The great civilizations of the galaxy had been using essentially the same technology for thousands of years. Ships got slightly bigger, weapons got slightly more powerful, but the fundamental designs never changed. Why would they? They worked. But the humans had taken a 6,000-year-old design and improved it in 6 months. What did that say about the Concordat's stagnation? I want constant monitoring of all human research facilities, Zenth ordered. If they can do this with shields, they can do it with anything we share with them. Back on Earth, Megan Ross was preparing for the Odyssey's test flight. The ship was humanity's newest deep space explorer, designed to travel further than any human vessel had gone before. And it was equipped with Eric Palmer's improved shields. All systems green, her co-pilot reported. Ready for departure. Take us out, Megan ordered. The Odyssey slipped away from the orbital dock and headed toward the asteroid belt. The plan was simple. Navigate through a dense field of space debris while testing the shield system under real conditions. It was dangerous, but that was the point. They needed to know if the shields would hold. Entering the debris field now, Megan announced. Shields to full power. The ship shook as small rocks and ice particles began pelting the hull. The shield display showed the barrier flickering and adjusting, deflecting each impact with minimal energy expenditure. Eric's improvements were working perfectly. Then the sensor officer called out a warning. Captain, we have a problem. There's a meteor cluster ahead, bigger than our charts showed. Multiple objects, some the size of buildings. Megan checked the display. The meteors were moving fast, and there were too many to avoid. Any normal ship would need to retreat immediately. But she wanted to see what the shields could do. "Maintain course," she ordered. "Let's see what we've got." The first meteor hit like a hammer. The ship lurched, and alarms blared. But the shields held. The second and third impacts came in quick succession. The energy readings spiked, but stayed well below critical levels. A dozen more strikes followed, each one absorbed and deflected by the adaptive shield system. When they emerged from the cluster, the ship was intact. Not even a scratch. "Shields at 72% capacity," the engineer reported, his voice filled with awe. "That bombardment should have destroyed us." Unknown to the crew, a Concordat observation ship had been monitoring the test flight. The alien captain watched the sensor recordings 3 times to make sure he understood what he had witnessed. "Get me Admiral Zenth immediately," he ordered. When Zenth saw the footage, his worst fears were confirmed. The human ship had survived impacts that would have crippled most Concordat vessels, and they had done it using human-modified technology that was only 6 months old. He composed a message to the council, his hands steady despite the dread in his heart. "The humans don't just learn," he wrote. "They optimize. Every system they touch becomes more efficient. Every design they study becomes better. If we continue sharing technology with them, they will surpass us within a generation." He paused, considering his next words carefully. They were treasonous to everything the Concordat stood for, but they were true. "Our civilizations have been stagnant for millennia. We have mistaken stability for wisdom and preservation for strength. The humans are showing us what we have become: comfortable, complacent, and afraid of change. Recommend immediate containment protocols. Not because the humans are dangerous, but because their example is. If other young species see what humans accomplish, they will question why the Concordat's technology hasn't advanced in 10,000 years. They will wonder if we have been holding them back, deliberately." Zenth sent the message, and sat back in his chair. He had served the Concordat faithfully for 2 centuries. But watching the human ship dance through that meteor storm, he felt something he hadn't experienced in a very long time: envy. On Earth, Eric Palmer was celebrating with his team. The test flight had been a complete success. Already he was sketching ideas for the next generation of shields, ways to make them even more efficient, even more adaptive. "You know what I was thinking?" he said to his assistant. "If we can improve their shields this much, imagine what we could do with their medical technology, or their communication systems, or their weapons." His assistant grinned. "The Concordat's going to love us." But Eric felt a small nagging doubt. The Concordat's response to their shield improvements had been oddly muted. A brief acknowledgement, nothing more. No congratulations, no requests for collaboration. Just silence. "I'm sure they will." 3 days later, the Concordat imposed new restrictions on technology sharing. Humans would no longer have open access to the technical databases. All future exchanges would require individual approval from the Council. The official reason was cultural protection and preventing dangerous misuse of advanced technology. But Eric read between the lines. They weren't afraid humans would misuse the technology. They were afraid of what humans would do with it. They were afraid of progress. And that fear, Eric realized, was the most damning indictment of the Concordat he could imagine. Danny Clark had never expected to change the galaxy. He was just a biomedical engineer who wanted to help people. But when he saw what the Concordat's medical nanotechnology could do, he also saw what it couldn't do. "Look at this," he said to his research partner, pointing at the alien medical report on his screen. "The nanobots they use for cellular repair are amazing, but they only work for about 6 hours before they break down. Then the patient needs another injection." "That's still better than anything we have," his partner replied. "But it could be so much better," Danny insisted. He had spent 3 months studying the Concordat nanotechnology, breaking down every component, understanding every function. And he had found the problem. The nanobots used a power system that degraded rapidly in human biology. The aliens had designed them for their own physiology, which was different from humans in subtle but important ways. Danny spent the next month redesigning the power cells. He made them adaptive, able to draw energy from the patient's own cellular processes. When he finally tested the improved nanobots, they didn't last 6 hours. They lasted 3 days. A 300% improvement. The first patient was a woman with severe nerve damage from an accident. The original alien nanobots had helped, but would have required injections every few hours for weeks. With Danny's improved version, a single treatment was enough to repair the damage completely. Word spread quickly. Within weeks, hospitals across Earth were requesting the improved nanotechnology. And, because humans being humans, they shared the innovation freely with their alien trading partners. That's when things got interesting. Dr. Helen Brooks was having a similar breakthrough with communication technology. The Concordat's faster-than-light communication system was revolutionary compared to human radio, but it was also frustratingly slow. Messages between star systems took hours to transmit, sometimes days. "I don't understand why they accept this," Helen muttered, reviewing the technical specifications for the 100th time. "The technology is solid, but the routing system is ancient. They're using sequential processing when parallel processing would be 10 times faster." She rebuilt the entire communication protocol from the ground up. Instead of sending messages through a series of relay stations in sequence, her new system sent fragments through multiple routes simultaneously, reassembling them at the destination. It was messier and required more sophisticated error correction, but it worked. The first test message traveled from Earth to Alpha Centauri and back in 3 minutes. The old system would have taken 4 hours. "This is incredible," her supervisor said, reviewing the results. "We need to share this with the Concordat immediately." But when Helen submitted her improvements to the Concordat's Technology Review Board, the response was not what she expected. Instead of gratitude, she received a formal notice that her modifications were unapproved and potentially destabilizing to existing infrastructure. "Destabilizing?" Helen read the message aloud in disbelief. "I made it better. How is that destabilizing?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Kate Sullivan was an intelligence officer who spent most of her time monitoring communications traffic for threats. She wasn't supposed to be intercepting Concordat diplomatic channels. But when she noticed unusual encryption patterns, she couldn't help herself. What she found made her blood run cold. "Jake, you need to see this," she said, bursting into Commander Morrison's office. Jake looked up from his paperwork. "Kate, you look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," she said, pulling up the decrypted messages on his screen. "I've seen our future if we don't do something." The messages were from various Concordat Council members discussing the human problem. The language was careful, diplomatic, but the meaning was clear. They were afraid, not of human weapons or human aggression, but of human innovation. One message from Admiral Zenth was particularly blunt. "The humans have improved every technology we have shared with them. Shield efficiency up 34%. Medical nanotechnology effectiveness up 300%. FTL communication speed up by a factor of 10. At this rate, they will achieve parity with Concordat technology within 5 years. Supremacy within 10. Another message proposed technology sharing restrictions to slow human progress. A third suggested infrastructure integration requirements that would force humans to use Concordat standard systems instead of developing their own. But the most disturbing message came from a Concordat economist. "The problem is not merely technological. Human-improved products are appearing in galactic markets. Traders prefer them because they are more efficient and more reliable. This is creating economic pressure on established manufacturers. If this continues, Human innovation will destabilize the entire Concordat economic structure. Jake read through all the messages twice. They're not trying to protect us, he said finally. They're trying to protect themselves. We're not threatening them. We're threatening their entire way of life, Jake replied. Think about it. These civilizations have been using the same technology for thousands of years. They've built their entire economy, their entire social structure around that stability. And then we show up and start improving everything we touch. So they're going to stop us? They're going to try. The announcement came a week later. The Galactic Concordat was implementing new technology-sharing protocols for humanity. All human-modified technology would need to be approved by the Concordat before being shared with other species. Human researchers would be limited in their access to alien technology databases. And most importantly, humans would be required to adopt Concordat standard systems for all space vessels and facilities. The official reason was cultural protection and safety. The real reason was control. Ambassador Krell arrived to deliver the news personally. He met with Jake in the same orbital station where they had first met a year ago. But this time, the conversation was very different. Commander Morrison, I hope you understand these restrictions are necessary, Krell said, his four hands folded in a gesture of false sympathy. I understand perfectly, Jake replied coldly. You're afraid of us. Afraid? Krell's golden eyes narrowed. That is absurd. We are simply maintaining order and stability. You're maintaining stagnation, Jake shot back. Your civilization stopped advancing thousands of years ago, and you're terrified that we're going to show everyone what's possible when you never stop trying to improve. Krell's composure cracked slightly. You don't understand what you're doing. The galaxy runs on stability. Trade, diplomacy, peace. All of it depends on predictable, consistent technology. Your constant improvements create chaos. They create progress, Jake corrected. And if you're calling that chaos, then maybe your system is the problem, not our solution. This discussion is pointless, Krell said stiffly. The restrictions have been approved by the Council. You will comply or face economic sanctions. After Krell left, Jake called an emergency meeting with Earth's top scientists and engineers. Danny Clark was there, as was Helen Brooks, Eric Palmer, Lisa Grant, and dozens of others. He told them everything, the intercepted messages, the Concordat's fears, the true purpose of the restrictions. They want to limit us, he concluded, make us just another stagnant civilization happy with what we have. What do we do? Danny asked. We do what humans have always done, Lisa said, a fierce determination in her eyes. We adapt. They want to restrict our access to their databases? Fine. We'll develop our own technology. They want to control what we share? We'll find other species who want to trade fairly. They want us to stop improving? Well, that's the one thing they'll never get. The room erupted in agreement. Scientists started planning independent research projects. Engineers began designing human-specific systems that didn't rely on Concordat standards. And intelligence officers like Kate started reaching out to other species, looking for allies. Because if there was one thing humans were good at, it was finding a way forward when someone told them to stop. On his ship, Ambassador Krell reported back to the Council. The restrictions are in place. The humans are contained. But Admiral Zenth, reading the same report, felt a deep unease. He had studied human history. He knew what happened when you tried to suppress human innovation. They didn't stop. They just got more creative. We've just made them angry. And in the galactic markets, away from Concordat oversight, human-improved technology continued to spread. Traders who had tasted efficiency didn't want to go back to the old ways. Young alien engineers who had seen what was possible started asking dangerous questions. The Concordat had tried to stop progress, but progress, once started, was impossible to contain. Paul Bennett didn't hear them coming until it was too late. He was deep in his work, running simulations on his quantum computing breakthrough, when the doors to his laboratory burst open. 6 figures in Concordat enforcement armor stormed in, weapons drawn. "Dr. Bennett, you are in violation of Technology Sharing Protocol 47, the lead enforcer announced. "Your research is hereby confiscated, pending Concordat review." "What? You can't just—" Paul started, but 2 enforcers were already moving toward his computer systems. "We can, and we are," the leader replied. "All data on quantum computing advancements must be surrendered immediately." Paul watched helplessly as they downloaded his research. 3 years of work vanishing into their storage devices. The breakthrough that would have revolutionized computing, making it 1,000 times faster, was being stolen right in front of him. "This is outrageous," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "We had permission to research this." "Your permission has been revoked," the enforcer said simply. "The Concordat Council has determined that unrestricted human research poses a risk to galactic stability." They left him standing in his empty laboratory, years of work gone in minutes. Paul immediately contacted Jake Morrison. "They're not even pretending anymore," Paul said bitterly. "They just took everything, every file, every simulation, every breakthrough." Jake's jaw tightened. "You're the 3rd researcher they've hit this week. They raided Eric's lab yesterday and confiscated his next-generation shield prototypes. This isn't about safety or protocols. This is suppression." That information came from Sophie Miller. Sophie was one of Earth's best intelligence operatives. She had spent months building a cover identity as a low-level technician on a Concordat military station. It was boring work, but it gave her access to places most humans never saw. And 3 days ago, that access had paid off in the worst possible way. She had been running a routine maintenance check near the officer's briefing room when she heard voices. Normally she would have moved on, but something about the tone made her pause. She activated the recording device hidden in her toolkit and listened. "Operation Plateau is approved," a voice said. She recognized it as Admiral Zenth. "We proceed in 72 hours. "And the targets?" another voice asked. "All major human research facilities," Zenth replied. "We'll make it look like accidents, equipment failures, containment breaches, nothing traceable to us. The goal is not to destroy the facilities, but to set their research back by several years, long enough for us to regain control of the situation." Sophie's blood went cold. They were planning to sabotage Earth's research infrastructure, and they were going to make it look like humanity's own fault. She smuggled the recording out and got it to Earth as fast as possible. When Jake heard it, he immediately called an emergency meeting with the Defense Council. "They're planning to attack us," he said, playing the recording for the assembled officers, "and they're going to blame us for it." "When?" asked Lieutenant Ryan Foster, who commanded Earth's Special Operations Unit. "The recording is 3 days old," Sophie replied via video link, "which means we have less than 24 hours. The room erupted into urgent discussion. How could they defend against this? How could they prove the Concordat's involvement? How could they stop it without starting a war? "We can't stop it," Jake said quietly, and everyone fell silent. "We don't have time to evacuate all the facilities or implement new security measures. Operation Plateau is going to happen." "So we just let them destroy years of research?" Eric Palmer demanded. "No," Jake said with a slight smile. "We let them try. Sophie, you said Zent's plan was to set us back several years, right? Not to completely destroy the facilities." "That's what he said. Equipment failures and containment breaches. Then they'll target specific systems. Power grids, cooling systems, data storage," Jake reasoned. "Things that would cause maximum disruption with minimal evidence." "So we protect those systems," Ryan Foster said, catching on. "Better than that," Jake replied. "We upgrade them with human improvements. The Concordat is planning this sabotage based on their knowledge of their own technology. But we're not using their systems anymore, are we?" Eric's eyes lit up. The security upgrades we installed last month, they're based on human-improved adaptive algorithms, not Concordat standard systems. Exactly, Jake said. The Concordat thinks they know our weaknesses because they designed the original systems. But we've changed everything. Their sabotage will fail, and when it does, we'll have proof of what they tried to do. The next 20 hours were frantic. Teams scrambled to reinforce critical systems and set up monitoring equipment. Sophie continued feeding intelligence from her position on the Concordat station, identifying the sabotage teams and their intended methods. Ryan Foster positioned response teams at every major facility. And then they waited. The attack came at 0300 hours, coordinated across 12 facilities simultaneously. Sophisticated viruses infiltrated computer systems. Remote triggers attempted to overload power grids. Saboteurs in maintenance uniforms tried to access critical infrastructure, but every attempt failed. The viruses encountered security systems they didn't recognize and were isolated immediately. The power grid overloads triggered safeguards that shouldn't have existed according to Concordat specifications. The saboteurs found themselves locked out of facilities that were supposed to be accessible. In the quantum research lab where Paul Bennett worked, he watched on security monitors as 2 Concordat agents tried desperately to override the door controls to the reactor room. They're using a Concordat military-grade bypass tool, his security chief said. Should work on any standard lock. Good thing we don't use standard locks anymore, Paul replied with grim satisfaction. Hit them with the neural stunner. The agents dropped unconscious. Response teams moved in to secure them. Similar scenes played out across all 12 facilities. Not a single sabotage attempt succeeded, and every attempt was recorded in perfect detail. Jake Morrison compiled all the evidence: security footage, captured equipment, the intercepted communications, statements from the captured saboteurs. He packaged it all together and did something that shocked everyone. He broadcast it across the entire galactic communication network. Every species in the Concordat received the same message. This is Commander Jake Morrison of Earth. We are sharing evidence of a coordinated attack on human research facilities by Concordat military forces. We ask all civilized species to review this evidence and draw your own conclusions about the Concordat's commitment to peace and cooperation. The response was immediate and explosive. Young civilizations that had always trusted the Concordat's wisdom were horrified. Even some of the older civilizations were disturbed by the blatant aggression. The Concordat's carefully maintained image of benevolent leadership crumbled in hours. Protests erupted on a dozen worlds. Traders refused to deliver goods to Concordat stations. 3 species formally demanded an investigation. The Council was in chaos. Ambassador Krell arrived at Earth within a day, but this time he wasn't issuing demands. He was pleading. You must understand this was not official policy, he said, his forehand spread in a gesture of desperation. Admiral Zenth acted without full Council approval. We are conducting an internal investigation. You're lying, Jake said bluntly. We have recordings of the Council approving Operation Plateau. Don't insult us with obvious deceptions. Krell's shoulders slumped. For the first time since Jake had met him, the ambassador looked old and tired. What do you want? Trade concessions? Territory? We can negotiate. We don't want your concessions, Jake replied. We want you to stop trying to control us. Stop suppressing progress. Stop hoarding technology like it's sacred. And stop punishing species for having the audacity to improve on your ancient designs. You're asking us to change everything we are, Krell said quietly. No, Jake corrected. We're asking you to remember what you used to be, before you got comfortable, before you decided that maintaining power was more important than pursuing progress. Over the next weeks, the Concordat began to fracture. 5 younger civilizations, tired of the stagnation and inspired by humanity's example, formally withdrew from the Council. They sent delegations to Earth, not to demand technology, but to propose cooperation. "We want what you have," one alien ambassador told Jake. "Not your shields or your computers. We want your drive to improve, your refusal to accept good enough. Can you teach us that?" "We can try." Meanwhile, Admiral Zenth faced trial on the Concordat homeworld. But as he stood before the Council, he felt no shame, only sadness. "I tried to protect us," he said. "But you cannot protect stagnation forever. The humans have shown the galaxy what we forgot. That progress requires risk, innovation requires courage, and growth requires accepting that what we have today will be obsolete tomorrow." "You betrayed the Concordat," the head counselor said. "No," Zenth replied. "The Concordat betrayed itself. Thousands of years ago, we stopped reaching for the stars. We stopped dreaming of what was possible. The humans are guilty of only one crime, reminding everyone what we lost." He was sentenced to exile, but as he left the chambers, he smiled, because he knew the truth. The Concordat had failed, not in stopping the humans, but in stopping the idea that the humans represented. Progress was loose in the galaxy, and once people remembered what it felt like to improve, to grow, to reach for something better, you could never make them forget again. The hall was packed with beings from across the galaxy. Representatives from over 40 species had gathered on the newly constructed station orbiting Earth, and the air buzzed with dozens of different languages being translated in real time. Jake Morrison stood at the podium, looking out at the assembled crowd, and felt the weight of history. 2 years. That's all it had been since Ambassador Krell first arrived at Earth with his condescending evaluation. 2 years since humanity learned they were not alone in the universe. And in those 2 years, everything had changed. "Thank you all for coming," Jake began. "We gather here today not as the Galactic Concordat, but as the Innovation Alliance. 5 founding species united not by power or territory, but by a simple idea, that progress should never stop. The 5 founding species, humans, the Kalari, the Dresh, the Morvani, and the Tull, had broken away from the Concordat 3 months ago. It had been a peaceful separation, but a final one. They had different visions for the future. Eric Palmer sat in the front row, barely able to contain his excitement. Tomorrow the Galactic Institute of Applied Sciences would officially open its doors. He and Danny Clark had spent the last year planning it, a research center where any species could come to learn, share, and most importantly, improve upon existing technology. "We've already received applications from over 2,000 researchers," Eric whispered to Danny, "from 30 different species." "Including some from Concordat worlds," Danny whispered back with a grin. "Their young people are tired of the old ways." On stage, Jake continued his speech. "The Concordat has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years based on the principle of stability. They preserved technology, maintained order, and kept the peace. These are not small achievements. But somewhere along the way, they forgot that stability without growth is just another word for stagnation." In the audience, an unexpected figure shifted in his seat. Admiral Zenth, no longer an admiral, no longer part of the Concordat military, listened to every word. His exile had been bitter, but he had chosen to spend it on Earth, learning from the species that had exposed everything wrong with his civilization. "I was wrong about you," he had told Jake during their first meeting after his exile. "I thought your constant innovation was dangerous. I was right about that. But I was wrong about whether that danger was a bad thing." Now Zenth worked as a consultant for the Innovation Alliance, helping them understand Concordat psychology and politics. It was strange work for a former military commander, but he found it fulfilling in ways his old job never had been. The speech concluded, and the crowd dispersed into smaller groups. Lisa Grant found herself cornered by a group of young Kalari engineers who wanted to know everything about human design philosophy. "We don't have a single philosophy," she tried to explain. "It's more of an attitude. You build something, you test it, you find the problems, and then you fix them. Then you do it again, and again, forever." "But when do you stop?" one Kalari asked, genuinely confused. Lisa laughed. "That's the thing. You don't stop. There's always room for improvement. Always a way to make something faster, stronger, more efficient, or more elegant. The moment you think you've reached perfection is the moment you've stopped being a good engineer." Across the station, Paul Bennett was finally getting revenge on the Concordat, in the most satisfying way possible. His quantum computing breakthrough, the one they had tried to confiscate, was now the foundation of the Alliance's new communication network. And it was spectacular. Messages that took hours to send through Concordat relays now arrived in seconds. The old Concordat network was still functional, but traders and diplomats increasingly preferred the Alliance system. It was faster, more reliable, and constantly being improved. "We just implemented the version 4 upgrade," Paul's assistant reported. "Another 15% speed increase." "Good," Paul replied. "Start working on version 5. The assistant blinked in surprise. "But we just released version 4 yesterday." "And tomorrow, someone will think of a way to make it better," Paul said with a smile. "That's the whole point." The Galactic Institute of Applied Sciences opened the next day to tremendous fanfare. The building itself was a collaborative effort. Human structural design, Kalari power systems, Dresch environmental controls, Morvani material science, and Tull aesthetic sensibility. It was beautiful and functional, and it represented everything the Alliance stood for. Eric Palmer gave the opening address to the first class of students. Humans sat next to aliens of a dozen different species, all eager to learn. "This institution has one rule," Eric told them. "Question everything. If someone tells you something is impossible, ask why. If someone says a design can't be improved, prove them wrong. If someone claims they've reached the limits of what's possible, show them they're thinking too small." A young human student raised her hand. "But won't that cause problems? The Concordat says constant change creates instability." "The Concordat is afraid of change because they've been comfortable for too long," Eric replied honestly. "Yes, innovation causes disruption. Yes, progress can be uncomfortable. But the alternative is slow death. Civilizations that stop growing start dying. It might take 1,000 years, but it's still death." Helen Brooks was having similar conversations in the Alliance's new central hub. As the chief architect of the communication network, she was training the next generation of technicians. But she made sure they understood that her designs were not sacred. "I want you to break this," she told her students, pointing at the network architecture. "I want you to find every flaw, every inefficiency, every place where it could be better. And then I want you to fix it. Don't ask my permission. Just make it better." One student seemed troubled. "But what if we break something important?" "Then we'll fix that too," Helen said. "Look, progress isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to take risks, make mistakes, and learn from them. The Concordat is terrified of mistakes because they think any flaw reveals weakness. We know that flaws are just opportunities for improvement." Meanwhile, the Concordat was watching all of this with growing alarm. Their younger generation was increasingly vocal about joining the Alliance. Their best engineers were leaving for the Institute. Their traders were switching to Alliance networks and Alliance-improved products. Ambassador Krell, still holding his position despite the scandal, met with the Concordat Council to discuss the crisis. "We are losing them," he said bluntly. "Not through war or conquest, but through example. The humans have shown the galaxy what progress looks like, and our people want it." "Then we suppress it," one council member suggested. "Ban travel to Alliance space. Restrict access to their networks." We tried that, Crow reminded them wearily. You cannot suppress an idea whose time has come. So what do you suggest? The head counselor asked. Krell took a deep breath. We change, we adapt. We remember what we used to be before we became comfortable. The room fell silent. The suggestion was radical, almost heretical. The Concordat had been stable for 10 millennia. Change that stability? It went against everything they believed. But one counselor, younger than the others, spoke up. He's right. I've visited the Alliance station. I've seen what they're building. And I realized something. We're not the guardians of civilization anymore. We're museum curators, preserving the past. The Alliance is building the future. The debate raged for days. But slowly, a consensus emerged. The Concordat couldn't stop the Alliance. They couldn't compete with constant innovation, using 10,000-year-old strategies. They had only one choice: evolve or become irrelevant. 3 months later, Krell returned to Earth. But this time, he came with an olive branch instead of restrictions. The Concordat wishes to propose a partnership, he told Jake. Not membership in the Alliance. We understand that ship has sailed. But cooperation. We have resources, territory, and historical knowledge. You have innovation and drive. Perhaps we can learn from each other. Jake considered the offer carefully. No more suppression? No more trying to control our research? No more suppression, Krell confirmed. We've learned, painfully, that you cannot cage progress. We would rather be part of it than swept aside by it. The partnership was formalized a month later. It wasn't perfect. Old habits died hard, and there were plenty of Concordat members who resented the Alliance. But it was a start. On the 1-year anniversary of the Galactic Institute's opening, Danny Clark stood before a crowd of students and reflected on how much had changed. His medical nanotechnology was now standard across 30 species. Diseases that had plagued civilizations for centuries were being cured. Lives were being saved. You know what's amazing? He told the students. A year ago, this technology was 300% better than the Concordat standard. Today, it's 600% better. Because people like you keep improving it. That's the power of progress. It doesn't just move forward, it accelerates. Megan Ross, now commanding the Alliance's flagship exploration vessel, was making her own history. Her ship, equipped with the latest human-designed FTL drive, had just completed a journey that should have taken months in only 3 weeks. And the drive had been designed collaboratively by human, Kalari, and Dresh engineers working together. How does it feel to be pushing the boundaries of what's possible? A reporter asked her. Megan grinned. Like being human. We don't know any other way to live. Back on Earth, Lisa Grant was teaching another class of young engineers when a student asked the question she loved most. Professor Grant, do you think we'll ever reach the limits of innovation? Will there ever be a point where we can't improve anything more? Lisa thought about it for a moment, then smiled. I don't know, but I hope I never find out. Because the day we stop asking how can this be better, is the day we stop being human. And I don't ever want that to happen. Admiral Zenth, sitting in on the class as an observer, felt something he hadn't experienced in his 2 centuries of life. Not hope for victory or conquest, but hope for growth, for learning, for becoming something better than he was. After class, he approached Lisa. You've changed the galaxy, you know. Not just through your technology, but through your philosophy. We didn't change anything, Lisa replied. We just reminded everyone of something they already knew. That standing still is the same as going backward. That comfort is the enemy of progress. That the moment you think you're finished is the moment you failed. Is that a human saying? Zenth asked. No, Lisa said with a laugh. I just made it up. But give it a few years, someone will probably improve on it. That night, Jake Morrison stood at the observation window of the Alliance station, looking out at the stars. Ships from a dozen different species moved through the space lanes, trading, exploring, collaborating. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had been the catalyst. But as he watched, he knew that this was just the beginning. Because humans would never stop improving, never stop pushing forward, never accept that what they had today was good enough for tomorrow. And now, thanks to humanity's example, neither would anyone else. The galaxy had entered a new age, not an age of conquest or empire, but an age of endless innovation, an age where the only constant was improvement, and the only limit was imagination. Somewhere in the void, new species were emerging, developing their own technologies, preparing for their own first contact. And when they joined the galactic community, they would find not a stagnant empire of ancient powers, but a thriving alliance of civilizations all committed to the same simple principle. Progress never stops, innovation never ends, and there is always, always room for improvement. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, and it was a gift that would keep giving forever.